while the Washington Post details an elderly, egotistical president shielded from reality by a Slavish coterie of loyalists. Never said that word before. So ailing, mendacious, egotistical, and that's from media outlets that spent 4 years smooching Biden's wrinkly ass. They were so far up his butt, I'm surprised they didn't diagnose the cancer.
I don't see how Joe Biden can survive here. I know it's better for Trump if he does. I don't really care. He's not fit. His staff is part of the biggest presidential cover-up in decades. He needs to step down from the presidency, never mind the campaign, for the safety of the country. That's what a big...
What happens when a gaffe-prone president runs into two of the sharpest and most relentless voices in modern media? You get a full-blown political firestorm. Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly didn't simply criticize the presidency of Joe Biden. They lit up the conversation around his legacy with biting sarcasm and razor-sharp commentary. From the stumbles on the airport tarmac to confusing economic calls that left many scratching their heads, they picked apart the moments that critics say made the term feel like a slow-moving series of missteps. Every awkward pause, every memory slip, and every headline-grabbing moment became part of the discussion. And the result wasn't just criticism. It felt like a dramatic retelling of a presidency that often left people wondering what might happen next.
Biden said he tried to stay out of his dad's administration. It's true, he claimed he was just living at the White House because he wanted to.
I don't see how Joe Biden can survive here. I know it's better for Trump if he does. I don't really care. He's not fit. His staff is part of the biggest presidential cover-up in decades. He needs to step down from the presidency, never mind the campaign, for the safety of the country. That's what a big...
It all started with some of the most memorable and widely shared moments of the presidency, the physical stumbles. First came the moment when he seemed to lose a race with a stationary bicycle. A sudden tumble onto the pavement that quickly turned into a symbol critics couldn't stop talking about. To them, it looked like a perfect metaphor for the whole term. A confident start, a confusing middle, and an awkward, ungraceful landing. Gutfeld even joked that it sometimes felt like gravity had a personal grudge against him. Then there were the repeated trips while climbing the stairs of Air Force One, moments that cameras caught again and again. Each clip quickly spread online, turning a simple misstep into yet another headline that critics and commentators couldn't resist revisiting.
He's without question the worst president in my lifetime, and that is the proof. Because we've talked about this. His solution for inflation is explaining what inflation is. Here's the thing about inflation. Food prices go up. And what we're going to try to do, and I think this is going to work, is maybe get the prices, you can get the prices to go down. Unless it's gas, because we don't want you to use gas. The worst part about this whole thing is that his presidency is ripe for mockery and ridicule and even gentle humor if you like him. I mean, just Hunter Biden alone, in the recent stuff.
But the awkward moments weren't only physical. They started drifting into an even stranger territory. After finishing a major speech, Joe Biden turned to his right, stretched out his hand for a firm handshake, and there was no one there. Just empty space. For a few seconds, he stood with his hand in the air, looking a bit unsure, before slowly walking away. The clip quickly made the rounds online. Gutfeld joked that the scene looked like the political version of someone chasing butterflies. Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly laughed about how the so-called ghost handshake seemed to get more attention than me of his policy announcements. It was one of those odd public moments that left viewers scratching their heads, replaying the clip and wondering what exactly had just happened.
See, that fella found work since they canceled Portlandia. But that was Jill Biden's so-called work husband, which is like being her regular husband, except with more solid food and less diarrhea. Anthony Brunel was Jill's chief of staff and an assistant to Joe Biden, which is pretty amazing, given that having just one of those...
And it didn't seem like a one-time slip. For critics, it started to look like a pattern. At times, Joe Biden would drift away in the middle of a photo op, slowly stepping aside from other world leaders as if something in the distance had caught his attention. After speeches, he would occasionally wander off stage, leaving staff members quickly moving to guide the next moment. Those clips spread fast online, turning serious events into moments people debated and replayed. Even gatherings like the Group of Seven Summit sometimes sparked jokes on social media, with people turning it into a playful "Where's Joe" game. Some world leaders could be seen pausing for a second, unsure whether to keep the conversation going or wait for direction. Greg Gutfeld summed it up in his usual sarcastic style, saying moments like that made the whole scene feel less like careful diplomacy and more like a live comedy sketch.
I have respect for all these guys. I don't have respect for the other side. Joe Biden would never sit for an interview with me, same as Hillary Clinton, as she was out there saying I was a terrific journalist because I had this contentious exchange with Trump. Never once sat with me, never agreed, even when the left was loving me, because she quite literally did not have the balls, neither physically nor theoretically, nor in no way. So anyway, there's my little rant about our weak politicians and our...
And if his physical movements left people puzzled, his speaking style sometimes added even more confusion. Out of nowhere, Joe Biden seemed to enter what critics jokingly called the whisper phase. Nothing quite said strength, they argued, like leaning deep into the microphone and delivering a major policy line in a quiet, intense whisper. The sudden change in tone caught people off guard and quickly became a talking point online. Megyn Kelly even joked that he sounded like a retired ghost tour guide trying to stay relevant with the crowd. He would pause for dramatic effect and then drop into that strange whisper, which sometimes felt less like a commander-in-chief giving direction and more like someone auditioning for a job at a local haunted house attraction.
So obviously they're hiding something. Like, why would Joe never take any interviews? Who was behind the last-minute pardons? Who made the terrible decisions, the kind that turned a career moderate into a Bolshevik? And why was his schedule emptier than a swimming pool near a burrito truck? Meanwhile, Hunter has his own beef, saying the Dems only lost because lost to Trump because they weren't loyal to his father, the leader of the party.
The ultimate verbal slip, however, seemed to come from his relationship with the teleprompter. At times, Joe Biden appeared to treat it less like a helpful guide and more like a script that had to be followed word for word. That even meant reading parts that weren't really meant to be spoken. On a few occasions, lines like "end of quote" or brief stage cues slipped out loud during serious speeches. Moments like that quickly made the rounds online. Commentators, including Greg Gutfeld, joked that it turned formal policy addresses into something closer to a strange, fourth-wall-breaking performance. Instead of sounding like a natural delivery, critics said it sometimes felt as if he wasn't simply sharing a message but carefully reading every word placed in front of him.
We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Oh my God.
This string of public missteps helped fuel a narrative that Megyn Kelly pushed hard. She often argued that Joe Biden wasn't really in control, but had become the public face of what she described as one of the biggest presidential cover-ups in decades. To critics watching from the outside, some appearances almost look like carefully managed moments rather than natural interactions. Staff members were constantly nearby, guiding him, offering reminders, and sometimes steering the situation when things drifted off track. During press events, aides could be seen stepping in quickly, calling out the next question or moving things along. If a reporter tried to ask something off script, the moment was often cut short and the event wrapped up fast. Scenes like that added to the ongoing debate and kept the spotlight firmly on how tightly controlled many of those public moments seemed to be.
This notable exchange with Representative Jason Crow, Democrat from Colorado, who received a Bronze Star as an Army Ranger fighting for us in Iraq. In a video of the Zoom that I was able to view, writes the reporter, you can hear Biden chastising Crow, who asked about the importance of national security to voters. First of all, I think you're dead wrong on national security, the president says. I put NATO together. Name me a foreign leader who thinks I'm not the most effective leader in the world on foreign policy. Tell me who the hell that is. Tell me who put NATO back together. Tell me who enlarged NATO. Tell me who did the Pacific Basin. Tell me who did something that you've never done with your Bronze Star.
Megyn Kelly and Greg Gutfeld didn't place all the blame on staff. They also aimed their criticism directly at the media. In their view, many news organizations had spent years looking the other way, slowly addressing issues they believe should have been questioned much earlier. They framed it as a case where the press had taken far too long to challenge what they saw as serious concerns surrounding the presidency of Joe Biden. One example they often pointed to was the controversy around the Hunter Biden laptop controversy. Early on, parts of the story were dismissed by some outlets and commentators as misinformation or possible foreign disinformation, which later became a major talking point for critics who felt the coverage had been too quick to reject it.
If the rare occasions you get to see him now, like at a cabinet meeting for the first time in a couple of years, that he let his wife run. Now we see him over the weekend on Saturday. There's a press conference. We've got this group called the Quad. We're having a Quad summit. This is the group that's supposed to take on the world challenges like the rise of the Chinese. It's Japan, Australia, India, and the United States. And he gets up there and he's supposed to be introducing Prime Minister Modi of India, obviously forgets, and here's what happened.
Now, who am I introducing next? Who's next?
While the White House worked hard to manage the president's image, critics said it couldn't hide the economic pressure many people were feeling. Joe Biden's signature Build Back Better plan became a major target for commentators. Megyn Kelly mocked the plan, comparing it to taking a burned-down house and replacing it with a slightly uglier and far more expensive tent. As prices climbed and inflation dominated headlines, critics kept pointing back to early assurances that the problem would only be temporary. Greg Gutfeld joked that the response sometimes sounded like trying to stop a raging house fire by lighting a few scented candles and hoping the smell alone would fix the problem.
Aide was called to testify on Joe's decline. Well, I hope someone asked him if President Joe Biden was fit to exercise the duties of the president.
Was President Joe Biden fit to exercise the duties of the president?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Nothing seemed to hit Americans harder than the sharp jump in gas prices. As debates grew over pipelines and domestic energy production, critics argued that decisions made during the administration of Joe Biden were followed by rising fuel costs across the country. The topic quickly became a major talking point on television and online. Greg Gutfeld joked that the energy strategy felt a bit like canceling your Uber, stepping outside, and simply hoping a horse shows up instead. When prices later dipped by just a few cents, critics said the celebration sounded a little too enthusiastic. Meanwhile, many families were still trying to manage the cost of filling up the tank just to get to work or handle everyday errands, which kept the issue front and center in public conversation.
The whole story. Because even as the media is just now admitting this scandal was real, we know they're complicit. They took their own sweet time addressing the greatest fraud in presidential history, waiting till now, of course, to spill the beans. Oh, sure, the media could have made an honest mistake, like when they said Hunter's laptop was fake, or the Fine People hoax was real, or that Tim Walz has...
Then there was the situation at the southern border, another issue critics said was spinning further out of control. As crossings climbed to record levels, the administration of Joe Biden faced growing pressure to explain its approach. Commentators like Greg Gutfeld mocked the policy, joking that it sometimes sounded like putting up a "please enter responsibly" sign and hoping for the best. Meanwhile, officials announced task forces, meetings, and new plans that critics said were filled with enough buzzwords to cover an entire board of Scrabble tiles. When asked about the issue during interviews or press moments, some viewers felt the answers could come across as complicated or unclear. For many people living in border communities, the ongoing debate left them feeling like they were stuck in the middle of a problem that still didn't have a simple solution.
You say your mental focus is?
Oh, it's focused. I haven't, look, I have trouble even saying to myself my own head the number of years. I no more think of myself as being as old as I am than fly. I mean, it's just not, I haven't observed anything in terms of, there's not things I don't do now that I did before, whether it's physical or mental.
But if the problems at home were already heating up, critics said his actions on the world stage poured fuel on the fire. The withdrawal from Afghanistan became one of the most heavily debated moments of the administration of Joe Biden. What was meant to end America's longest war quickly turned into a chaotic and emotional scene that dominated global headlines. Commentators like Greg Gutfeld describe the situation with biting humor, comparing it to leaving a party only to realize you forgot your kids, your car, your pants, and your dignity on the way out. As the withdrawal unfolded, reports highlighted billions of dollars worth of U.S. military equipment left behind, which later fell into the hands of the Taliban. The images and stories from those final days fueled intense criticism and kept the debate going long after the evacuation ended.
Perform again, saying, "I'd like to do a effing gig without falling over." Same, said one old man. Yeah. An ice cream shop worker in Minnesota was fired for accepting a $100 tip because the shop's owner says some elderly customers have dementia. Gee, I wonder which customer tipped her.
Critics like Greg Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly have continued to target the controversies surrounding Hunter Biden, arguing that the situation raised serious questions during the presidency of Joe Biden. They often claim Biden distanced himself from his son's business dealings, while critics accuse the administration of avoiding responsibility on several issues. Rising inflation was blamed on global pressures and corporate behavior, including the war started by Vladimir Putin, while debates about the border and supply chains continued in Washington. Now, even after leaving office, Biden still appears at public events defending his record. Supporters applaud his leadership, while critics like Kelly and Gutfeld keep the jokes and commentary coming, saying the political debate around his presidency is far from over.